Your shadow isn't what they told you it was. I'll prove they've been lying about darkness your entire life. And once you see the truth, once you understand what they've hidden from you, there's no going back to ignorance. The cage door will be open, and you'll never unsee the bars they built around your power. What if I told you that every part of yourself you've been taught to hide, to suppress, to be ashamed of, contains the exact power you've been desperately searching for in all the wrong places? And what if the people who taught you to fear your darkness knew this from the very beginning? What if they understood that by keeping you split, by teaching you to reject half of who you are, they could control the trajectory of your entire existence? What if your fragmentation was the whole point and your wholeness was the greatest threat to their systems of control? There's a reason they call it shadow work, because they want you to think it's work, effort, something difficult and painful that you need a therapist for, something that requires years of expensive sessions and pharmaceutical intervention. They want you dependent. They want you managed. They want you perpetually healing, never healed. But here's what nobody tells you. Your shadow isn't something that needs fixing. It's not broken. It's not evil. It's not the monster they painted it to be in your mind. It's a map, an ancient, precise map that shows you exactly where your power was buried and who buried it there. And more importantly, it shows you exactly how to get it back, how to reclaim every piece of yourself they convinced you to abandon. And before you think this is some new age spirituality thing, some fluffy concept without substance, let me show you something that will change how you see reality. Every ancient culture had shadow practices. The Egyptians had it in their mystery schools, encoded in hieroglyphs that modern scholars still struggle to fully decode. The Greeks understood it through their underworld journeys, through myths that were never just stories, but instruction manuals for consciousness. Indigenous cultures worldwide practiced it through vision quests and dark retreats, traditions that have survived thousands of years because they work. They knew that power doesn't come from the light. Power comes from integrating what you find in the darkness. Then something happened. Something deliberate. Something calculated. The knowledge was buried, and a new system was built on top of it. If you want to know why everything you're about to learn was systematically hidden from you, hit subscribe right now, because this goes deeper than you think, and YouTube doesn't want this information spreading. The algorithm buries content like this, so subscribing tells the system you want truth, not comfort. In the 1950s, psychology shifted. Not gradually, suddenly. They stopped teaching people to integrate their shadow and started teaching them to manage it, to cope with it, to medicate it away. And the moment they made that shift, you lost access to the most powerful force in your reality, your own darkness, your own depth, your own complete spectrum of human capacity. They turned you from a sovereign being into a managed patient, from a whole person into a collection of symptoms that needed treatment. Because when you understand that your shadow isn't your enemy, when you realize it's actually a storage container for every gift you were forced to hide to survive, you become unstoppable. Let me prove it to you right now with something you can verify in your own life immediately. Think about a trait you hate in other people, something that instantly triggers you, makes your blood boil, makes you judge them immediately, without even thinking about it. Got it? Now here's the disturbing truth. That trait lives in you, and you don't hate it in them, you hate it in yourself. But here's the part they never tell you. That trait you're rejecting is connected to a power you desperately need. The very thing you push away is the exact thing that would complete you. The thing you condemn in others is the gift you denied yourself. If you hate people who are selfish, it's because you rejected your own self-interest to survive your childhood. And now you give endlessly, burn out, and wonder why you're exhausted, why you have nothing left, why everyone takes and nobody gives back. The power you need is healthy selfishness, boundary setting, self-preservation. It's right there in your shadow, waiting. And the moment you reclaim it, people will stop draining you because you'll stop allowing it. If you hate people who are aggressive, it's because you learned that showing force meant punishment, so you became passive, agreeable, easy, and now you can't stand up for yourself. You let people walk over you. You say yes when you mean no. The power you need is assertiveness, the ability to say no, to protect yourself, to take up space without apology. It's in your shadow, locked away since the first time someone told you that anger was unacceptable, that force was wrong, that fighting back was bad. If you hate people who take up space, who are loud, who demand attention, it's because you were taught to be small, quiet, invisible, and now you struggle to be seen, to be heard, to matter. You fade into the background even when you have something important to say. The power you need is presence, visibility, the ability to claim space without permission. It's all in your shadow, waiting for you to stop apologizing for existing, waiting for you to finally take up the room you deserve. Every single trait you judge in others is a rejected part of yourself. And every rejected part of yourself took a piece of your power with it when you buried it. The shadow isn't your darkness, it's your missing wholeness. It's the half of you that's been in exile, and it's been waiting decades for you to finally bring it home. Here's the truth nobody's telling you. You've been doing the healing work, right? Therapy, affirmations, meditation, journaling. You're not lazy, and you're definitely not broken. But here's what's happening. You've been treating your shadow like an enemy that needs to be defeated. And they taught you that on purpose. They needed you to see yourself as fractured, as someone who needs fixing, as someone who needs their systems, their treatments, their endless cycles of management. They needed you to be a customer, not a sovereign being. Think about it. Every superhero movie, light versus dark, every religion, heaven versus hell, every self-help book, positive thinking versus negative thinking. They gave you a binary, a war between good and evil, light and shadow, and then they told you which side to choose. They made you believe that half of human nature is evil and must be destroyed. And in doing so, they destroyed your wholeness. They convinced you that being complete meant being dangerous. But here's what they don't want you to know. The ancient traditions didn't see it that way. They understood that light without darkness creates blindness, not enlightenment. That power without shadow creates tyranny, not leadership. That consciousness without unconsciousness creates delusion, not awakening. They understood that wholeness requires integration of opposites, not victory of one over the other. They knew that trying to be only light makes you a fool, and embracing only darkness makes you a monster. But integrating both makes you whole, makes you wise, makes you powerful in a way that serves rather than dominates. The ancient Egyptians had a practice called the Duat journey, the soul's journey through the underworld. It wasn't punishment, it was initiation. You had to travel through 12 gates of darkness, face every fear, every rejected part of yourself, and integrate it. Only then could you reach enlightenment. Only then were you considered complete enough to lead, to teach, to hold power responsibly. They understood that a leader who hasn't integrated their shadow will project it onto their people, will become the very thing they claim to oppose. The Greeks understood this through Persephone's myth. She had to descend into Hades, spend time in the underworld, before she could become the queen of both realms. The power wasn't in staying in the light. The power was in mastering the darkness and bringing it back with you. She became more powerful, not less, by embracing both worlds. She became sovereign over life and death, growth and decay, the seen and the unseen. Indigenous cultures sent their young people into vision quests. Days alone in the wilderness, in the dark, facing their shadows, their fears, their rejected selves. They came back transformed, whole, powerful, not because they defeated their darkness, but because they integrated it. Because they learned that the wolf you fear and the wolf you feed are both parts of the same pack, and you are the alpha. Both wolves serve you when you stop trying to kill one of them. Then modern psychology came along and turned your shadow into a diagnosis. Something to manage, something to fix, something to medicate. They gave you coping mechanisms instead of integration practices. They taught you to suppress instead of embrace. And the moment you started treating your shadow as the enemy, you lost access to your power. You became a customer instead of a sovereign being. You became someone who needs help instead of someone who is whole. Now, here's what they don't want you to understand. Your shadow isn't random. It's not just a collection of bad traits you picked up. It's a precise map. Every part of your shadow was created at a specific moment when you learned that showing that part of yourself meant punishment, rejection, or danger. Your shadow is a historical record of every time you chose survival over authenticity. It's an archive of every compromise you made to stay safe, to stay loved, to stay alive. Let me explain. When you were a kid, maybe you were loud, energetic, full of life, and someone told you to be quiet, to sit still, to stop being so much. In that moment, you made a decision. An unconscious decision that being big, being seen, being energetic equals danger. So you buried that part of yourself. You created a shadow, and that shadow has been running your life ever since, making decisions for you, limiting you, protecting you from dangers that no longer exist. But here's the thing, you didn't just bury the loudness. You buried everything connected to it. Your enthusiasm, your joy, your ability to take up space, your presence, your power. All of it went into the shadow because your nervous system linked them together. One trauma, 1,000 consequences. One suppression, a lifetime of limitations. One moment of pain, decades of playing small. Now, decades later, you struggle with visibility. You can't speak up in meetings. You can't promote yourself. You can't claim your space. And you think it's just who you are? No, it's who you became to survive. Your real self is in the shadow, waiting. The person you were born to be is still there, buried but not dead, suppressed but not destroyed, waiting for you to finally excavate them. This is the map. Every limitation you experience today is connected to a moment in your past when you buried a part of yourself to stay safe. And that buried part is holding the exact power you need to break through that limitation. The key to your freedom is hidden inside your prison. The solution to your problem is buried in what you think is the problem. People who can't set boundaries buried their anger. People who can't receive love buried their worthiness. People who can't make money buried their ambition. People who can't speak up buried their voice. People who can't lead buried their power. The power you're searching for isn't out there. It's not in another course, another book, another guru. It's in your shadow. It's been there all along, waiting for you to stop running and start excavating. And the moment you understand this, everything changes. Because shadow work isn't about fixing yourself. It's about excavating yourself, finding the parts you buried and bringing them back online. It's archaeology, not therapy. You're not broken, you're buried. You're not damaged, you're incomplete. And completion is just a matter of reclaiming what you abandoned. So here's what changes once you understand this. Once you get that your shadow is a map showing you exactly where your power is hidden, you stop running from it. You stop medicating it. You stop trying to positive think it away. You turn toward it. You ask it questions. You listen to what it's been trying to tell you for years. You start treating your triggers as teachers, your reactions as revelations, your shadows as messengers. And here's where it gets really powerful. The ancient map, the one that every culture used before modern psychology corrupted it, has 3 gates. 3 stages of shadow integration that unlock 3 levels of power. And nobody teaches this anymore because if you knew it, you'd become ungovernable. You'd become sovereign. And sovereign people don't need saviors, don't need managers, don't need permission to be whole. They don't consume endlessly. They don't comply mindlessly. They don't perform constantly. They simply are. Gate 1 is recognition. This is where most people get stuck, because recognition means admitting that the traits you hate in others live in you. And your ego will fight this with everything it has. Your ego built its entire identity around not being those things. Your ego needs to be good, to be right, to be better than. Your ego survives by creating separation, by making you different from, better than, more evolved than those people. You're not selfish, you're generous, you're not aggressive, you're peaceful, you're not arrogant, you're humble. Your ego is invested in these identities because they kept you safe, but they're also keeping you small. They're keeping you half alive, half expressed, half powerful. They're keeping you acceptable instead of authentic, palatable instead of powerful. Recognition means looking at someone who triggers you and saying, that's me. That trait they're showing, I have it too. I've just been hiding it. And the moment you say that, something in your nervous system shifts. The wall between you and your shadow starts to crack. Light begins to seep through the fractures. Permission begins to emerge from the denial. Try it right now. Think of someone who pisses you off. Someone whose behavior makes you want to scream. What is it? Are they selfish? Manipulative? Attention-seeking? Controlling? Arrogant? Lazy? Needy? Got it? Now say this out loud. I am also that. I have that in me. I reject that in myself. Feel the resistance? That's your ego protecting the wall. Feel the anger? That's your shadow asking to be seen. Feel the shame? That's the part of you that's been buried for years, finally sensing that it might be safe to come out. All of these sensations are information. All of them are clues to where your power is hidden. Your resistance is the guardian of your treasure. Recognition is painful, because it destroys your self-image. The version of yourself you've been performing for everyone, including yourself. But here's the secret. That performance is exhausting, and underneath it is your real self, the one with access to all the power. The one who doesn't need to perform because they simply are. The one who is whole, complete, integrated, real. Gate 2 is dialogue. This is where the ancient practices go deep, and it's where modern psychology completely fails you. Because modern psychology treats your shadow like a problem to analyze. Ancient practices treated it like a being to communicate with, like an ally you've been at war with for far too long, like a part of yourself that has intelligence, wisdom, and a protective purpose you haven't understood. The Egyptians personified their shadow aspects as deities. Sekhmet for rage, Set for chaos, Anubis for death and transformation. They didn't try to get rid of these forces. They learned to speak with them, to understand them, to work with them. They understood that these forces were neutral and only became destructive when ignored or suppressed. They understood that what you don't integrate, you project. What you don't own, owns you. Carl Jung, the only modern psychologist who actually understood this, said your shadow is autonomous. It has its own intelligence, its own agenda, its own voice. And if you don't dialogue with it consciously, it will dialogue with you unconsciously, through sabotage, through addiction, through patterns you can't break, through self-destruction you can't explain. Your shadow will get your attention one way or another. The only question is whether you'll listen willingly or be forced to listen through crisis. Here's how you do it. You create space, darkness helps, and you ask your shadow a direct question, not in your head, out loud. Why are you here? What do you need? What are you protecting me from? And then you listen. You create silence and you wait for the answer. You give your shadow permission to finally speak. After years of being silenced, and I know how insane this sounds. I know you're thinking, I'm not talking to myself in the dark like some kind of crazy person. But here's the thing. You're already talking to yourself all day long. The difference is, this time you're including the parts of yourself you've been ignoring. This time you're inviting the exiled parts home. This time you're making space for the voices that have been screaming from the basement of your consciousness. When I first tried this, I felt ridiculous. I sat in my room at night, lights off, and I said, Shadow, I know you're there. I know I've been pushing you away. I'm listening now. Nothing happened at first. Just silence and the feeling that I was performing some weird ritual for nobody. Just me and my delusions in the dark, talking to parts of myself I wasn't sure existed. Then I asked, why do I sabotage myself every time I get close to success? And I waited. And the answer came. Not as a voice exactly, more like a knowing that appeared fully formed in my mind. Because success means being seen, and being seen means danger. Instant chills. Because I knew it was true. Every time I got close to a breakthrough, I'd self-destruct, miss the meeting, say the wrong thing, sabotage the relationship, and I thought it was just bad luck or lack of discipline. No, it was my shadow protecting me from a danger that didn't exist anymore. My shadow was operating on information from when I was 7 years old, when being seen meant punishment, when visibility meant violence. Dialogue reveals the logic of your shadow. And once you understand the logic, you can update it. You can say, thank you for protecting me. That was true when I was 5. It's not true anymore. I'm safe now. You can let me be seen. You can show your shadow that the world has changed, that you've changed, that the old rules don't apply. You can update the operating system that's been running your life. And something in your nervous system relaxes. Permission granted. Power unlocked. The guard at the gate steps aside. The dam breaks. The prison door opens. Gate 3 is integration. This is where you stop fighting your shadow and start using it. This is where the map leads to treasure. Because integration doesn't mean becoming your shadow. It means accessing its power consciously instead of being controlled by it unconsciously. It means bringing the exiled parts back into the kingdom and giving them a role that serves you instead of sabotages you. Let's say you buried your anger to survive your childhood. Your parents punished any expression of it, so you learned to be agreeable, to never make waves, to keep the peace at all costs. That anger didn't disappear. It went into your shadow, and now it leaks out as passive aggression, as resentment, as chronic tension in your body, as headaches and stomach problems and unexplained pain. Your body is holding what your mind won't acknowledge. Integration means bringing that anger back online, not as unconscious rage, but as conscious power. Anger is just energy, and that energy, when used consciously, becomes assertiveness, becomes boundary setting, becomes the ability to say no and mean it, becomes the force that protects you and everything you care about, becomes the sword that defends your kingdom. People who integrated their anger don't explode. They don't people please either. They simply state their boundaries clearly, calmly, with zero negotiation. That's shadow power. That's what integration looks like. That's what it means to be whole. That's what it means to have access to your full spectrum of human capacity. Same with every other trait. Selfishness becomes self-care. Manipulation becomes strategy. Arrogance becomes confidence. Chaos becomes assertion. Greed becomes ambition. Every shadow trait has a light side and a dark side. You've been stuck in the unconscious dark side. Integration gives you access to the conscious light side. You get to choose how to use the power instead of having the power use you. And this is where the ancient map becomes practical. Because once you integrate a shadow trait, you gain access to a power you didn't have before. Literally. Your nervous system expands, your capacity increases, opportunities that were invisible become visible. People respond to you differently because your frequency changed. You're broadcasting from a different channel now, one that includes the full spectrum. You're no longer playing half the keys on the piano. You're finally using the whole instrument. I integrated my rage, and within weeks I started setting boundaries I'd never been able to set before. I stopped overgiving. I stopped saying yes when I meant no. And the crazy thing is, people respected me more, not less, because I was finally whole. Because people can sense when you respect yourself, and they mirror that energy back to you, because the world treats you the way you treat yourself. Your shadow isn't the problem. Your rejection of your shadow is the problem, and the moment you stop rejecting it and start integrating it, you become the person you were always meant to be before they taught you to split yourself in half. Now let's talk about what the elite know. Ever wonder why powerful people seem to have no problem expressing traits you were taught to suppress? Why they're comfortable being aggressive, being selfish, being ruthless, being visible? Why they take what they want without apology? Why they don't seem to struggle with the same limitations you do? It's not because they're sociopaths, though some are. It's because they were raised in environments that taught them shadow integration, not shadow suppression. Elite families teach their children that power requires wholeness, that you can't lead if you're afraid of your own darkness, that you can't succeed if you're performing niceness instead of being strategic. They understand that complete human beings have access to the full spectrum of human behavior. They understand that morality without power is martyrdom, and power without morality is tyranny, but integrated shadow gives you both. They teach their kids Latin and Greek, languages of empire and conquest. They teach them debate, how to argue, how to dominate a conversation. They teach them chess, war strategy disguised as a game. They teach them to be comfortable with conflict, with competition, with taking what they want. They teach them that the world belongs to those who claim it. They teach them that asking for permission is asking to be denied. Meanwhile, they teach your kids to share, to be nice, to play fair, to suppress aggression. They teach your kids that anger is bad, that selfishness is wrong, that confidence is arrogance. They split your kids in half and call it socialization. They call it being a good person. They call it civilization. They call it education when it's really domestication. This isn't accident. This is strategy. A population that fears its own power is controllable. A population that's integrated its shadow is dangerous. So they teach you to suppress while they teach their children to integrate. And then they wonder why there's a gap between the elite and everyone else. They know exactly why. They designed it that way. They profit from your fragmentation. The gap isn't intelligence. It's not privilege alone. It's shadow integration. They have access to their full range of human power. You've been taught to only use half of yourself, and half a person can't compete with a whole one. A fragmented being can't compete with an integrated one. A suppressed person can't compete with someone who has access to their full spectrum. But now you know. Now you see the game. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start noticing how the successful people around you express traits you were taught to suppress. How they're comfortable saying no. How they promote themselves without shame. How they take up space without apologizing. how they use all of themselves to get what they want, how they play the full keyboard while you've been limited to the white keys. They're not better than you, they're just whole, and you're about to become whole too. Here's something they definitely don't want you to know. Your body is storing your shadow, not metaphorically, literally. Every suppressed emotion, every rejected trait, every buried part of yourself is held in your tissues, your fascia, your nervous system, as tension, as pain, as chronic conditions you can't explain. Your body is a vault, and your shadow is what's locked inside. Your symptoms are the shadow knocking, asking to be let out. Dr. Gabor Mate proved this. He studied thousands of patients with chronic illness and found that almost all of them had histories of emotional suppression. They learned early in life to disconnect from their feelings, to prioritize others' needs over their own, to suppress anger, to perform happiness. And decades later, their bodies broke down. The bill came due. The shadow collected its debt. Because suppression requires energy, constant energy. Your nervous system has to work 24/7 to keep your shadow contained. That's exhausting. And eventually, your body can't maintain it anymore. The shadow leaks out as illness, as pain, as conditions that doctors can't fully explain, because the root cause isn't physical. It's energetic. It's unprocessed emotion. It's unexpressed truth. It's the part of you that refuses to stay buried any longer. This is why some people do everything right and still get sick. Clean diet, regular exercise, good sleep, low stress. Doesn't matter. Because they're storing decades of suppressed shadow in their body, and it's eating them from the inside. The body keeps the score, as they say, and the score is written in symptoms, in pain, in disease, in chronic conditions that resist all treatment because the treatment is looking in the wrong place. The ancient practices understood this. They didn't separate mind and body. Shadow work was body work. The Egyptians used dance and breath work. The Greeks used ecstatic rituals. Indigenous cultures used sweat lodges, drumming, movement, anything that let the body release what the mind was holding. They understood that the body speaks in sensation, not language, and you have to let it speak. You have to let it move. You have to let it express what words cannot contain. Because your mind can lie. Your mind can tell you you're fine, you've moved on, you're over it. But your body doesn't lie. Your body holds the truth. And if you want to integrate your shadow, you have to let your body speak. You have to listen to what it's been screaming at you through pain and tension and exhaustion. You have to feel what you've been thinking your way around for decades. Try this. Think of something that triggers you emotionally. A memory, a person, a situation. Notice where you feel it in your body. Chest, throat, stomach. That's where that shadow aspect lives. That's where it's been stored, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades. That's the location of the treasure marked on your body's map. Now breathe into that spot, not to make it go away, to give it space, to let it speak. And as you breathe, ask it, what do you need to tell me? And wait. Your body will answer, not in words, but in sensation, in emotion, in images. That's your shadow communicating through the only language the body knows. That's your truth trying to surface. This is the missing piece. You can think about your shadow all day long. You can journal about it, talk about it in therapy, analyze it endlessly. But if you don't let your body release it, it stays stuck. Integration happens through the body, not just the mind. The body is the gateway to the unconscious. The body is where the shadow lives. And when you release it, when you finally let that stored emotion, that suppressed trait, that buried part of yourself move through you instead of staying trapped, something incredible happens. You get your energy back, you get your life force back, you get yourself back. People who integrate their shadow report feeling lighter, more energized, more alive, because they're not spending energy anymore keeping parts of themselves locked away. They're whole. And wholeness doesn't require effort. Suppression does. Freedom is lighter than bondage. Truth is lighter than performance. Now, let me show you the map. The actual ancient map that shows you exactly where your power is buried and how to retrieve it. This isn't theory. This is practical, step-by-step shadow archaeology. And once you have the map, you can excavate any part of yourself you've lost. You can find any power you've buried. You can reclaim any gift you've abandoned. Step 1. Identify your triggers. This is reconnaissance. You're scanning your reality for clues about what's in your shadow. And the clues are everywhere. Every time you judge someone, that's a clue. Every time you feel intense emotion that seems disproportionate to the situation, that's a clue. Every time you notice a pattern repeating in your life, that's a clue. Your triggers are breadcrumbs leading you home. Your reactions are revelations waiting to be decoded. Make a list. Who triggers you? What traits do they have that make you react? Don't filter, don't judge, just write. Selfish, aggressive, manipulative, lazy, arrogant, weak, needy. Whatever comes up. This is your shadow showing you itself through projection. This is your unconscious waving at you through other people. This is your buried self trying to get your attention. Step 2, reverse the projection. This is where you take responsibility. Every trait on that list is a rejected part of you. I know you don't want to believe that. I know your ego is screaming right now, but try it anyway. This is where the real work begins. This is where transformation starts. Take each trait and complete this sentence. I am also blank. I have blank in me. I reject blank in myself. Say it out loud. Feel the resistance. That resistance is the wall between you and your power. That discomfort is the gate you must pass through. That shame is the guardian of your treasure. And here's the key. You're not admitting to being a terrible person. You're admitting to being a whole person. Every human has every trait. The difference is consciousness. Integrated people express these traits consciously when appropriate. Suppressed people express them unconsciously through sabotage. The trait exists either way. Integration just gives you the steering wheel. Integration just gives you choice. Step 3, find the origin. This is where you become a detective. For each shadow trait, ask yourself, when did I learn that this trait was dangerous? What happened that made me bury this part of myself? Go back as far as you can. Follow the trail to the source. Find the moment of burial. Usually it's childhood, a parent, a teacher, a sibling. Someone in authority punished you for showing that trait. Maybe you were aggressive and they called you bad. Maybe you were selfish and they called you greedy. Maybe you were confident and they called you arrogant. In that moment, you made a survival decision. This trait equals danger. Bury it, hide it, never show it again. Become someone else to stay safe. Finding the origin is powerful because it reveals that your shadow wasn't your choice. It was a survival adaptation, and that means it can be updated. You're not broken. You're just running outdated programming. You're operating on an old operating system that needs an update. You're living by rules that no longer apply. Step 4, dialogue and negotiate. This is where you talk to your shadow like it's a separate being, because in a way, it is. It has its own logic, its own intelligence, its own protective function, and it will not release its grip on you unless you acknowledge it and thank it, unless you honor its service, unless you recognize that it's been trying to protect you all along. Sit in a quiet, dark space. Address your shadow directly. I see you. I know you've been protecting me. Thank you. I'm ready to hear what you have to say. Then ask questions. Why are you here? What do you need? What are you protecting me from? And listen. Create space for the answer. Give your shadow the floor. The answers will come as thoughts, feelings, images, memories. Don't dismiss them as imagination. This is your unconscious communicating. And it's been trying to get your attention for years. It's been knocking on the door, and you've been pretending nobody's home. Now you're finally answering. Now you're finally listening. Then negotiate. Thank you for protecting me when I was 5. I don't need that protection anymore. I'm safe now. I give you permission to let go. And mean it. This is you updating your nervous system in real time. This is you telling your body that the danger has passed. This is you releasing yourself from a prison you built to survive. Step 5, integrate through action. This is where the map leads to treasure, because shadow work isn't complete until you bring that rejected trait back into your conscious behavior. You have to use it. You have to prove to your nervous system that it's safe. You have to show yourself that the world won't end when you finally become whole. If you integrated your anger, set a boundary. If you integrated your selfishness, say no to something. If you integrated your visibility, post that video, send that email, raise your hand in the meeting. Take conscious action using the trait you've been suppressing. Take the risk. Test the new programming. Prove to yourself that you can be whole and safe. And here's what happens. Your nervous system tests it. Is it safe to do this? And when nothing bad happens, when you don't get punished, rejected, or abandoned, your nervous system updates. Oh, it's safe now. I can be this part of myself. Permission granted. Power unlocked. The cage door opens. The dam breaks. You come home to yourself. This is the map. This is how you excavate your power from your shadow. And you can do this with every trait you've suppressed. Every time you do, you become more whole, more powerful, more yourself. Every integration expands your capacity, your presence, your impact. Every reclaimed part makes you more complete. The ancient mystery schools taught this as initiation. You can't become a leader, a healer, a creator until you've journeyed through your underworld and integrated what you find there. Because power without shadow integration is dangerous. It becomes tyranny. It becomes ego. It becomes corruption. It becomes the very thing you claim to oppose. But power with shadow integration becomes wisdom because you've faced yourself, you've seen your capacity for darkness and chosen consciousness, and that makes you trustworthy, that makes you whole, that makes you dangerous in the best possible way. Dangerous to systems that require your fragmentation to function. Now, here's the part that's going to mess with your head. Your shadow is where your gifts are buried too. Not just your power, your actual talents, your genius, your unique contribution to the world. It's all in there, hidden beneath the traits you were taught to suppress. Your purpose is in your shadow. Your calling is in what you've rejected. Think about it. When you were a kid, before they taught you to perform, you had natural inclinations, things that lit you up, things you were drawn to, things you were naturally good at. And what happened? Someone told you those things weren't valuable, weren't practical, weren't acceptable. Someone told you to be realistic, to grow up, to get serious, to stop dreaming and start being productive. Maybe you love to draw and they told you art doesn't pay. Maybe you love to perform and they told you to stop showing off. Maybe you love to build things and they told you to focus on academics. Maybe you love to talk and they told you to be quiet. Each time you buried a piece of your soul. Each time you abandoned a part of your purpose. In each of those moments, you didn't just bury the behavior. You buried the gift. And now, decades later, you're searching for your purpose, your passion, your calling, and you can't find it. Because it's in your shadow. Because you buried it so deep, you forgot it was there. Because you've been looking everywhere except the one place it's been hiding all along. This is why shadow work leads to creative breakthroughs. This is why people who integrate their shadow suddenly discover talents they didn't know they had. They didn't develop new talents. They excavated buried ones. They remembered who they were before they were taught who to be. They reclaimed gifts they abandoned to fit in, to be safe, to be loved. I buried my voice. I was loud as a kid, always talking, always asking questions, always challenging authority. And I got punished for it constantly. Sit down, be quiet, stop talking back. So I learned to be silent. I buried my voice, my questions, my challenge. I became agreeable, quiet, easy. I became invisible. I became acceptable instead of authentic. And for years, I struggled to express myself. I couldn't speak up in groups. I couldn't share my ideas. I couldn't create content. And I thought it was just who I was. Introverted, shy, not a communicator. I told myself stories about why I couldn't speak, and I believed every one of them. I made my limitation my identity. Then I did shadow work. I found that buried voice. I dialogued with it. I asked it why it went silent, and it said, because speaking up meant punishment, silence meant safety. And I updated that programming. I said, I'm safe now, I can speak. And I meant it. And everything changed. Everything. And within weeks, I started creating content. Words poured out of me. Ideas I'd been holding for years suddenly had permission to exist. And I realized I wasn't bad at communication. I was suppressing a gift. I was sitting on a gold mine and calling it dirt. I was starving in a feast because I'd been taught not to eat. Your genius is in your shadow. The thing you're here to do, the thing that will fulfill you and serve others, it's buried beneath the parts of yourself you learn to hide. And the moment you excavate it, your entire life changes. Your trajectory shifts, your purpose becomes clear, your path illuminates. This is why people who do deep shadow work often change careers, end relationships, move across the country, not because they're running away, because they're finally becoming who they actually are instead of who they were taught to be, because they're finally living from truth instead of programming, because they're finally whole enough to claim the life that's actually theirs. Your purpose isn't out there. It's not something you find. It's something you excavate from your own darkness. And the map shows you exactly where to dig, Your limitations point to your gifts. Your triggers reveal your power. Your shadow holds your treasure. Here's what nobody tells you about the dark night of the soul. It's not a breakdown. It's an excavation. Your shadow is forcing its way to the surface because it can't stay buried anymore. And you can either resist it and suffer, or you can work with it and transform. You can fight the process or surrender to it. You can make it hell or you can make it initiation. The dark night happens when your suppression system fails, when your ego's defenses crack, when the life you built on top of your shadow starts collapsing, and it feels like death because in a way it is. The false self is dying. The performed version of you is dissolving, and if you don't know what's happening, it's terrifying. It feels like you're losing your mind. It feels like the end. But here's the secret. The dark night is initiation. Every spiritual tradition recognizes this. Jesus in the desert, Buddha under the tree, the hero in the underworld. You have to go through the darkness to reach the light, not around it, through it. There are no shortcuts. There are no bypasses. There is only the journey through. And the darkness isn't punishment, it's preparation. Your shadow is dismantling everything that isn't authentically you so that you can rebuild from truth instead of programming. But you have to let it happen. You have to stop resisting. You have to trust the process even when it feels like destruction. You have to know that what's being destroyed needed to be destroyed. Most people try to medicate their way out of the dark night. Antidepressants, alcohol, distraction, toxic positivity, anything to avoid feeling what's coming up. And I'm not saying medication is wrong. Sometimes it's necessary. But if you use it to suppress instead of stabilize, you're just delaying the inevitable. You're postponing the transformation. You're choosing slow death over fast rebirth. The shadow will wait. It's patient. It's been waiting your whole life. And it will keep creating dark nights until you finally turn toward it and listen. Until you finally stop running and start excavating. Until you finally choose wholeness over performance. I had mine 3 years ago. Everything collapsed at once. Relationship ended. Business failed. Health problems. Existential crisis. I thought I was losing my mind. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't function. And every self-help tool I tried made it worse. Positive thinking felt like gaslighting. Affirmations felt like avoidance. Then I stopped fighting. I stopped trying to fix it. I sat in the darkness and said, okay, I'm listening. What are you trying to show me? And the answer came. Everything you built was fake. You've been performing your entire life. This is who you think you're supposed to be. Now let me show you who you actually are. And it destroyed me. Every belief, every identity, every story I told myself about who I was dissolved. And underneath was a stranger. A version of myself I'd never met because I'd been too busy performing. A version that had been waiting in the dark, patient and powerful and whole. That stranger was whole. That stranger had access to parts of me I'd buried for decades. Rage, ambition, desire, selfishness, power. All the things I was taught were bad. And when I integrated them, when I stopped performing and started being, everything changed. My life rearranged itself around this new frequency. Opportunities appeared. Relationships deepened. Purpose clarified. The dark night isn't the end. It's the beginning. It's your shadow saying, you're ready now. You're strong enough to see the truth. And the truth is, you're not who they told you to be. You're whoever you are underneath all the programming. And that person is powerful beyond measure. So if you're in a dark night right now, if everything feels like it's falling apart, know this. You're not broken. You're being broken open. Your shadow is excavating you. And on the other side of this is a version of yourself you can't even imagine yet. But that version is real. And it's waiting. And it's been waiting for you to finally come home. Let me tell you what happens when you complete the integration. When you've walked through all 3 gates and brought your shadow back online, you become unmistakable. Not better, not perfect, not healed. Whole. People feel it when you walk into a room. There's a presence, a groundedness, an authenticity that can't be faked. Because you're not performing anymore. You're not splitting your energy between who you are and who you think you should be. You're just you. All of you. Every rejected part, every buried gift, every suppressed power integrated and expressed. And that energy is magnetic. Opportunities appear. Relationships deepen. Creative flow increases. Not because you manifested it, because you stopped blocking it. Your shadow was a dam. Integration removed the dam. Now your power flows naturally, effortlessly, unstoppably. You stop tolerating situations that don't serve you. You stop people pleasing. You stop overgiving. You stop shrinking. Not because you became selfish or arrogant, because you became whole. And whole people don't betray themselves to make others comfortable. They don't abandon their truth to maintain false peace. They don't split themselves to fit into spaces that were never meant for them. They simply are, and that is enough. That is everything. That is power. This is the gift of shadow integration, not perfection, not healing in the way they taught you to think about it, but wholeness, completeness, access to the full spectrum of who you are. And when you have that, when you're operating from your complete self, everything becomes possible. Not easy, possible. There's a difference. Because wholeness doesn't mean you won't face challenges. It means you'll face them with your entire being instead of half of yourself. It means you'll have access to every tool in your arsenal instead of the few you were told were acceptable. It means you'll fight with your whole army instead of the handful of soldiers you were permitted to use. And here's what changes in your relationships. When you're whole, you stop attracting people who need you to stay fragmented. You stop attracting partners who need you to be small. You stop attracting friends who bond with you over your wounds instead of your wholeness. The people who were invested in your brokenness will leave, and the people who recognize your power will arrive. This can be painful. You might lose people you thought were your people. You might outgrow relationships you thought would last forever. You might find yourself alone for a while as the old connections fall away, and the new ones haven't formed yet. This is normal. This is part of the process. This is the cost of becoming whole in a world that profits from your fragmentation. But what you gain is worth what you lose. You gain relationships based on truth instead of performance. You gain connections with people who see you, not the mask you've been wearing. You gain love that doesn't require you to abandon yourself to receive it. You gain belonging that doesn't cost you your wholeness. And you gain sovereignty, the ability to govern yourself, the ability to make decisions from your complete self instead of your fragmented self, the ability to trust yourself because you're no longer at war with yourself. When you integrate your shadow, you become your own authority. You stop looking outside yourself for permission to be whole. This is what they fear most. Not that you'll become evil, not that you'll become destructive, but that you'll become sovereign, that you'll stop needing their systems, that you'll stop consuming their solutions to problems they created, that you'll stop asking permission to be whole when wholeness is your birthright. So if you're ready, if you're tired of being half alive, if you're done performing and ready to be, start with one trigger. Just one. Find the trait you hate most in others and admit it lives in you too. That's the first crack in the wall. That's the first gate opening. That's the beginning of your journey home to yourself. And know this, your shadow has been waiting for you. Every part you rejected, every gift you buried, every power you suppressed, it's all still there. Nothing is lost. Nothing is destroyed. It's just waiting for you to finally stop running, turn around, and reclaim it. It's waiting for you to remember that you were whole all along, and all you have to do is stop pretending you're not. The gates are before you. The journey is yours to take. And on the other side of your shadow is the most powerful version of yourself you've ever imagined. Not because you became someone new, but because you finally became completely, unapologetically, powerfully you. All of you. Every piece. Integrated, whole, free. This is shadow work. This is the ancient path. This is how you reclaim your power from the darkness where they convinced you to bury it. This is how you become ungovernable, sovereign, complete. This is how you stop being a half person, trying to survive in a system designed to keep you fragmented. This is how you become whole. And wholeness changes everything. Because when you're whole, you're unstoppable. When you're whole, you're free. When you're whole, you're finally, completely, powerfully alive.